Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. I very much appreciate your words, Ben, and I appreciate the work of you, Ben, and Franny in Washington, and Bob McChesney, of all of you who are here. I mean, this is the true grassroots of politics in America. I was elected to Congress 30 years ago for the first time, and I had no fundraiser that was bigger than $25 per head. And you could get elected to Congress. You can't do that today. You need millions of dollars to run for Congress unless the people rise up. And you know, that's what's been happening. I was chairman of the Telecommunications Committee beginning in 1987, and I had it until Newt Gingrich and the Republicans won Congress in 1994. And people were saying that the Democrats were deader than Elvis. And we know here that Elvis isn't dead, and neither is the Democratic Party, because we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to make sure that the voice of the people in this country is heard. I went over to the Civil Rights Museum this afternoon, and I thought about Martin Luther King and how far we've come in the last 40 years. But if you think of the media, using a study by the Free Press, we now know that while minorities represent 30% of the population in the United States, they only control 3.26% of all broadcast licenses, and African Americans only control 1.3%. If Martin Luther King were alive today here in Memphis, I think I know what he would say. He would say that that is a disgrace for the United States of America, 40 years after his death, that we have only made that kind of incremental progress. Media ownership has been a key component to ensuring diversity, localism, kind of a universality of who we are as a people in our country being created. And in a lot of ways, while we can't mandate who exactly owns each station in our country, diversity of ownership is a proxy. It ensures that there are many voices, many different voices that can be heard, and in that way we can be educated and we can grow as a people. In 2003, this country was challenged by the Federal Communications Commission. It was challenged by the Bush Federal Communications Commission. On a 3-2 vote, the Federal Communications Commission agreed that it would be permissible in the United States, in any one city, take Memphis or take your hometown, that one company could own 3 TV stations, 8 radio stations, the only newspaper in town, the cable system, and all of the news and information websites related to it simultaneously. It would have made Citizen Kane look like an underachiever. And what happened? What happened in our country? I'll tell you what happened. The people rose up. They rose up. And they said, this will not happen. And the good news is that the challenge was responded to. The courts enacted some limits, and it showed that the people can make a difference. And I'll tell you something else. It showed that the voices of two heroic people, two Democrats on the Federal Communications Commission, could be heard and could be responded to. And I would like those two great heroes, Jonathan Adelstein and Michael Copps, to stand up here for a round of applause from all of you for the incredible job that they did during that. Now we're going through a new round on the media ownership rules, and I think that the Federal Communications Commission now knows they have to have the hearings in public. They can't hide the facts under the table, but it's going to be critical for the people in this room to make sure that every shred of evidence is shared with every single American, that this is not a decision which is made in the cozy confines of the Federal Communications Commission alone, but in every living room in our country. And the people who are here tonight have the capacity to make that possible. President Kennedy used to say that to those whom much is given, much is expected, and the people in this room have been given more than all but a handful of people who have ever lived in the history of our world. You're in the upper one half of one percentile of privileged people. I am too. We're fortunate. With great gifts comes great responsibility, and you are discharging it. And the difference is already clear all across our country. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. In 2005, there was an effort. Bush was feeling his oats. He had just been reelected. He said, I've earned my political capital and I intend on spending it. And so in the spring of 2005, he sends out his people to begin the process of slashing the budget of the public broadcasting system of America. And so, and I wish you could have all been there, but in a way, I guess you were, because we were able to get 1 million signatures online in 3 weeks, and through my good friends at WGBH up in Boston, who was able to free up the big red dog for a press conference in Washington, and with the Free Press gathering volunteers to hold up signs at this press conference, we were able to beat back in just 1 week this incredible assault that was once again beginning. And I'll tell you something else. The effort that you put in to save PBS on that day is going to invoke that old saying by Mark Twain. You know, he used to say that a cat that's been burnt on a hot stove, sure enough, that cat won't get on a hot stove again, but it won't get on a cold one either. Because it's not the fear of God, it's the fear of voters that scares politicians down in Washington. And what you were able to do there is going to save PBS from pain for at least another 4 or 5 years, when they'll come back and they'll try it again, but will only be bigger and more powerful the next time they try to do it as well. Now, and we're going to have to do, by the way, we are going to have to do the same thing, because we are going to guarantee that they are going to keep their mitts off of public access TV. That is something else that all of you have the ability to make possible. And let's throw low power radio in there too, okay? Let's not leave any of these technologies in a situation where there isn't an enormous, Netroots campaign that can rise up and create political trouble for politicians in Washington. And so this new world that we're living in then moved to 2006. And by the way, let me just say this. Back in the 70s, when I joined the Telecommunications Subcommittee, and the 80s, it was lonely. You have no idea. Trying to protect the public interest during the Reagan years, it was tough. When he took the children's television laws off the books, It took me 4 years to put the children's television rules back on the books, okay? 4 years. I think in this modern era, it would take about 4 minutes, okay, if anyone tried to remove the requirement that all broadcasters have to provide educational and information every single week to the children in their viewing areas. And by the way, the same thing was true with the E-rate. When I proposed the E-rate to ensure that every school in America is wired, that every child have access to it at their desk in classrooms across the country, it's a $2.2 billion program per year now. That was done with the beginnings of a movement out there, school boards and public interest groups, but only a pale shadow compared to what we have today in terms of what we can accomplish. And so that set the stage for this huge debate, which began last year in the spring, this debate over internet freedom or net neutrality. On the scene are the telephone companies and the cable companies. And by the way, they actually have one lobbyist per congressman. Okay? Everybody knows the name of their telephone company lobbyist. That's an incredible advantage because people across America just don't have the ability to show up in Washington to be able to lobby on every single issue. And so this movement that began with Free Press and MoveOn.org and all of the people out here, the bloggers of America unite. You have nothing to lose but your network neutrality, okay? And out of just the mist comes this incredible revolution that winds up not with the 1 million signatures, the online signatures for the PBS effort, but now 1.5 million people sign up in order to have this hugest of all petitions just plop down right in the front of Congress to tell them to keep their hands off of the internet. And by the way, that started from the minute when I introduced the amendment in the subcommittee to save network neutrality, when it was just me and maybe 3 or 4 other members, to a point where within 2 weeks there are 700,000 people who have signed on, to by the time it's over on the Senate side, 1.5 million people have signed up. Let me tell you something about Congress. Congress is a stimulus response institution. There is nothing more stimulating than having 1.5 million people say, I don't think I want you to keep your job if you won't keep your hands off the internet. And by the way, that is exactly what happened. So we've got this now burgeoning movement. It's a force, it's a power that is unlike anything that I have seen in my 30 years in Congress. And as they try to take this technological DNA that is baked into the internet and to hand it over to a small number of communications colossi that wants to warp the World Wide Web into their own image of what it should look like, then the only thing that really stands between that happening is you. You it. And you have the power in your hands to make the difference. And you've already showed Washington what it looks like, because the city got buried twice. And I think all it is a preview of coming attractions, because you represent the newest and most powerful political force that this country has ever seen. It is now a reconnection back to all those people who can't afford to pay $1,000 to go to a fundraiser, and they look nostalgically back at the days when they could pay $10 or $25 to go to a congressman's fundraiser. And now you've created a way in which they can once again have this incredible power to influence the decisions that are made in Washington to determine the shape of democracy that shapes, in fact, the way the world works. Believe me, we would not be in a world today We would not be in a world today if 8 or 9 years ago this force really existed. I mean, No Child Left Behind has become Leave No School Standing. You know, the EPA now stands for Every Polluter's Ally. George Bush took a $5 trillion surplus that Bill Clinton left him and has turned it into an $8 trillion deficit. You know, if there was such a thing as a Nobel Prize in Economics in Reverse, George Bush would be the first winner of it. But we didn't have this capacity to almost instantaneously bypass the traditional media and to get the message out there, to telescope the time frame it takes in order to get the truth into the hands of the American people. And we're seeing it now in Iraq as well. The amount of time the president had between the first utterance of the word surge and the American people overwhelmingly coming out and rejecting it was about the time it took for him to say the word surge, okay? Because everyone was online and letting their congressmen, letting a country, letting the world know that they are fed up with the lies of President Bush. So this revolution is about innovation, it's about voices, it's about changing the dynamic in our country. And it goes all the way from the Christian Coalition and the Gun Owners of America over to MoveOn.org and Free Press. Everyone in America has a stake in making sure that you can get your message out, that you can have your voices heard. And there are many who will say, well, yeah, but why should Google get the break? Why should we be protecting Google? But that is exactly the wrong question to be asking. The correct question to be asking is not whether or not Sergey Brin can afford to pay today. It's, could Larry Page and Sergey Brin have afforded to pay in 1998? Could Jerry Yang have afforded to pay in 1995? Could Mark Andreessen, as he's trying to create Netscape, have afforded to pay in 1994? The answer in every one of those questions is no, they could not have. It would have been controlled by the Internet gatekeepers that would block out these innovators, block out these change agents that have transformed the world in which we live. So this protection of products still in beta, still in the minds of young, talented, or old and talented people in our country, must be protected. So I thank you, bloggers, for protecting the Internet, for protecting what has taken place. And let me just ask you a few questions. AT&T was offered in 1966 the opportunity to build the Internet. They were offered the contract to build it, but they turned it down. Now let me ask you this. What has AT&T done since then to develop the Internet? The answer is nothing. What has Verizon done to help invent the World Wide Web? What did they do in order to invent the browser? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. These companies did virtually nothing to develop anything that has to do with what we now know as the Internet today. And now they say they have a right to put up the toll roads, showing up as though they should own it all. Well, we are going to, in Washington, have an historic debate over the next 2 years. And I will chair the committee that is having those hearings. And I can promise you this. That unlike the last 2 years, it just won't be the CEOs of the telephone and the cable companies who are there You will be selecting witnesses to testify right next to him on the same day before the same congressman so that the voices of the American people can be heard as well. Another great man died 40 years ago as well, Robert F. Kennedy. And he gave a speech in a burnt-out ghetto in Detroit on the importance of a strong economy. And after speaking at length about the importance of growth, he wound up his speech with the following caution. We cannot measure national spirit by the Dow Jones average, nor national achievement by the gross domestic product. For the gross domestic product includes air pollution and advertising for cigarettes and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. It counts special locks for our doors and jails for the people who break them. And if the gross national product measures all of this, there is much that it does not comprehend. It does not allow for the health of our families, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. The gross national product measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America except that which makes us proud to be Americans. In our pursuit of a more competitive economy, we too must be mindful of the inadequacy of measurements like the gross national product engaging our progress as a society. For the gross national product measures the sheer brilliance of our high-tech engineering, the wizardry of wireless applications, and the brilliance of ever faster broadband speeds, without telling us whether these products and services bring value to our society. The truth is, a broadcast license, a website, a fiber optic connection in themselves are neither inherently good nor inherently bad. The telecommunications revolution has the potential to change our society only if we animate these technologies with the human values that represent our highest aspirations for our society. There is a Dickensian quality to this wire. It is the best of wires and the worst of wires simultaneously. It can enable and ennoble. It can degrade and debase. And that is our choice now, to ensure that we stand to guarantee that it does have the capacity to enable and to ennoble. I believe that we can do it right. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens, this conference is vitally important because it points us to the wave of the future. It is a wave of technological empowerment and innovation. It is a wave of grassroots activism that can make a difference in Washington, D.C., down to every single community in our country. It is a wave of digital democracy, the likes of which we have never seen in the history of our country. And I urge each of you to remember what the Beach Boys once sang to us: catch a wave and you're sitting on top of the world. If you take that message and you use it in Washington, you will not only affect how we vote in Washington in 2007 and 2008, but you will determine the future of democracy in our country. I thank each and every one of you for everything that you are doing, and I promise you that I will be your partner in Washington on every one of your issues. Thank you all so much.